We were told this could not be. I remember when Donald Trump began to complain about this, they say, oh man, you're an election denier. You're an election denier.
Division with voter ID laws, voter purging, voter caging, voter intimidation. There aren't going to be any more election
Supporters of John Gomes celebrating his successful lawsuit as a judge orders a new Democratic primary in the race for Bridgeport mayor.
We will not stand quiet. They violated our civil rights, and we stood and we said we will not accept that. And we spoke clear and we spoke united. And today we are victorious.
Superior Court Judge William Clark calling surveillance video
selected George W. Bush as the president. He was not elected. There is a
you see that? You see how it goes?
That these machines are hackable. A dishonest employee.
Oh, wow, look at this one. Look at this. Judge overturned Bridgeport mayoral election due to evidence of mail ballot fraud. Ooh, wow. Listen to this. The videos are shocking to the court and should be shocking to all the parties, noted Superior Court Judge William F. Clark. All right, Mr. Clark, you're the man. The judge went on to say the volume evidence in this case, including the many hundreds of hours of video surveillance disclosed and accepted into evidence, is perhaps unprecedented in a state of Connecticut in an election case. Gosh, we were told this has not been happening. We were told this could not be. I remember when Donald Trump began to complain about this, they say, oh man, you're an election denier. You're an election denier. That's just crazy. I can't believe you denied the election. And it's crazy. Like, election denying is not a new thing. Look at this.
You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee. And you can have the election stolen.
This is actually Democrats denying the election.
Stolen from you.
12 minutes of Democrats denying the election. I'm going to put a link to this video in the description below. Let's take a few more seconds of that.
Of unprecedented Trump.
So do you believe President Trump is an illegitimate president?
Based on what I just said, which I can't retract.
The Russian attempt to hack the election, and frankly, the FBI is weighing in on the election, I think makes his election illegitimate.
There was
Supreme Court stopped the counting of the votes, and if they let the count go on, Al Gore would have got the necessary votes.
The Supreme Court selected George W. Bush as the president. He was not elected. There is a
you see that? You see how it goes?
That these machines are hackable. A dishonest employee of the vendor or a dishonest employee of a local board.
Department into the voter suppression division with voter ID laws, voter purging, voter caging, voter intimidation. There aren't going to be any more election stealings.
And despite the final tally and the inauguration and the situation we find ourselves in, I do have one very affirmative statement to make. We won.
Without voter suppression, Stacey Abrams would be the governor of Georgia.
You know, that's how it goes. I'll put a link in the description below. I plan on doing a whole reaction video to this one. But hey, here's the point. Trump was guilty, was called a denier. But here is evidence right here. I guess when it comes to the case of Democrats, this is a crime. But when it comes to the case of Republican, Donald Trump, oh, we cannot investigate. He's an evildoer. But we're going to listen to Dr. Steve Turley with this one because he always brings home the goods. So let's enjoy this content.
Supporters of John Gomes celebrating his successful lawsuit as a judge orders a new Democratic primary in the race for Bridgeport mayor.
We will not stand quiet. They violated our civil rights, and we stood and we said we will not accept that. And we spoke clear and we spoke united. And today we are victorious.
Superior Court Judge William Clark calling surveillance video shocking. He found there was proof partisans had placed absentee ballots in drop boxes and determined with so many mishandled ballots, it calls the results of the primary election in serious doubt.
If it wasn't right the first time, got to do it again.
Kind of want to vote to make this a better place, and now we have to wait again.
Gomes lost to Mayor Joe Ganim. The judge has given everyone involved 10 days to come up with a plan for a new primary.
It's highly unusual and really going to the courts tends to be the absolute last tool that could be used in politicos and candidates' toolbox.
Gomes is hopeful another primary is not needed. He's aiming to win the mayor's race in next week's general election and appears on the ballot as an independent.
And I encourage every voter more than ever that today the court has said your voice does matter. And I said to you, do not give up.
And the Secretary of the State releasing a statement saying she is pleased with the judge's decision and her office will work with the other parties to set a new primary date.
Well, looky here. Surveillance of suspicious ballot box drop-offs is forcing a court to overturn an election. I wonder where we've seen concerns like that before, huh? Well, stay tuned because we're going to see the latest on the shock ruling and what it means for election integrity as we head into 2024. You're not going to want to miss this. All right, so we got some bombshell news coming out of my own home state of Connecticut. A judge has overturned a primary election in the city of Bridgeport after seeing what he called shocking surveillance footage of multiple people stuffing multiple absentee ballots in outdoor drop boxes. The judge concluded that there was indeed enough evidence of foul play for the primary election to be overturned and has thus ordered the Secretary of State to schedule a new primary election. Now, there's some weird ambiguity here because the general election is set for next Tuesday. And they're going to go through with it, even though the judge ordered a new primary. So we'll have to see how that all works itself out. But what's so key here with this judge's decision is that we now have a court that has officially recognized the clear violation of the process known as chain of custody, which is the certified process that tracks the movement of the ballot from the voter to the moment it's actually counted. So it doesn't matter who is actually voted for. Any deviation from that mandated process that tracks the movement of the ballot from the voter to when it's officially counted, any deviation from that legally mandated process renders the vote illegal and invalid. Now, of course, this is exactly what was documented on a mass scale in Dinesh D'Souza's 2000 Mules. The documentary draws from the investigative work of True the Vote founder Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips. They use what's called geofencing technology, which is basically a technology that, tracks your cell phone. And what they did is they tracked the movement of what are called mules, or the people who pick up ballots at warehouses and the like and deliver the ballots to drop-off boxes. Throughout the film, the tracking technology they acquired is compared with security camera footage at the various drop-off locations. And according to the documentary, they found that these mules were delivering multiple ballots to multiple ballot boxes in different locations. In fact, the film details how one person, one mule, delivered ballots to 28 different ballot drop boxes in Georgia. One person alone went to 28 different drop boxes. And so the conclusion of the film is that were we to discount the estimated number of votes that were illegally delivered, Donald Trump would have won the election easily. But of course, our courts back then wanted nothing to do with enforcing election integrity until 2 years later. 2 years after the 2020 election, the Wisconsin Supreme Court came out and ruled that hundreds of thousands of ballots that were cast in their state were actually illegal. That's right, 2 years after the fact.
Oh, man, this is crazy, man. Look what they've done. 2 years later. How do we clean this up? How do we go about cleaning this up? This is a mess. Tell you what, God knows. Only God knows.
Actually illegal. That's right. 2 years after the fact, the Wisconsin Supreme Court banned the use of drop boxes in all future elections from their state because they violated Wisconsin election law. Well, what do you know? In fact, as Slate.com noted in their headline, the ruling in many respects suggested that Biden's 2020 victory was indeed illegitimate, in that he won Wisconsin by barely 20,000 votes. It was a 4-3 vote on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and the ruling basically declared that every single ballot cast by means of drop boxes were in point of fact illegal and therefore basically invalid. So there you go. I mean, the next time You hear the legacy media talking about how the 2020 election was one of the single most pristine elections in the history of humanity. Remind them that the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled that hundreds of thousands of votes cast in their state were indeed illegal and illegitimate. And so as part of that ruling, the court also ruled that most ballot drop boxes were not allowed in the state and that a voter cannot have someone else return their completed absentee ballot on their behalf. So no more 2,000 mules kind of stuff allowed any longer in Wisconsin. And what happened in Connecticut, the overturning of an election, isn't novel. It's happened before. It actually happened with the 2020 election in the state of Florida. Nearly 20 months after a town councilman was certified the winner of an election in the Florida town of Eatonville, just outside of Orlando, a judge stepped in and ordered that he be removed from office due to the evidence of voter fraud. A judge ruled that Terrace Mack, who was previously sworn into office onto the Eatonville Town Council, the judge ruled he had to vacate his seat and that his challenger, Marlon Daniels, was entitled to it, precisely because the judge determined Daniels would have won were it not for the election fraud. And the parallels in this case, of course, with 2020 were startling. Daniels was ahead on election night, only to find out the next morning that he lost after a number of ballots suddenly surfaced for his opponent. He took it to court, and the judge found that there were serious discrepancies between ballots and actual voters. And as a result, the judge overturned the election and forced the guy who won due to voter fraud to vacate his seat and instead installed the challenger as the rightful winner. So that's another option, right? Instead of ordering another primary election in this case, you can actually just rule to have the opponent that was the victim of cheating just seated. So what sense should we make of all this? Well, as frustrating as all of this is, given that it appears you have to be a Democrat in order for our corrupt courts to step in and do anything, the good news is that these examples of legal intervention are having an impact. The very fact that the same corrupt court system has been weaponized to try to take President Trump out is itself testimony that they don't think they can pull off another 2020. Too much attention is being paid to election integrity by too many different factions, that there's no confidence at all that they can pull off another win for bumbling Biden like they did the last time. So again, as frustrating as all of this might be, ironically, the system that our founding fathers gave us seems to be working itself out to restore at least some semblance of election integrity in our nation right before 2024.
Wow, thank God for that. That was a great presentation as well. Again, they were saying Trump was an election denier. Here's the proof. They've denied the election too. So he's like, hey, man, here you are condemning the man for doing the very thing you yourself is guilty of. That's just crazy. Wow. You're talking about projecting. I mean, so based on the evidence, and again, a lot more could be said about this. Highly likely Trump did win. Highly likely, right? But however, we're gonna move forward, okay? We're gonna move forward. We just have to vote differently. 2024, you gotta vote differently. You gotta make sure that I'm hoping the system doesn't get rigged again. And when people are saying, oh, you election denier, it's like the people that are talking about what's going on in the system or trying to keep it fixed or trying to fix what's been broken. That's not a bad thing. So the idea that you cannot challenge it, again, Democrats have been challenging the election for a long time. All of a sudden you can't challenge it. I find that to be a problem. Anyway, listen, I got a final verse and I want to bring this video to an end. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of waters, he turneth it whithersoever he will. And I'll tell you what, God has the king's heart in his hands. He really does, man. He really does. So we can say God has the president's hearts in his hand, especially the one who's being called by the Lord. I don't believe every president is of the Lord, to be honest with you. Some of them, it's not Jesus. It's got to be something else, man. I'll tell you what, because they don't reflect his character. They don't care about his will, and they go and live a whole different life anti-God, anti-American, anti-principles. So we're not pushing, we're not advocating for them. Anyway, much more could be said about that. I thought this presentation was perfect, on point, spot on. So in essence, we can simply say Trump did actually win, but he got cheated really, really bad. These mules that were filling the boxes definitely had a role to play in the election, in the result of the election, I should say. But I don't think we need to have a fit about that now. We got to move forward. 2024 is right around the corner, and Trump's poll is looking exceptionally well right now. We should be advocating for that, praying for that, and making sure we're supporting the man as much as possible. Anyway, much more could be said about that. I just want to end this video. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a great day. Link in the description below to Dr. Steve Turley. Go check out his channel as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one. Bye.